It's now time for the Grobstein and Schuster Express on 1252 Sports Chicago.
All aboard!
And now, here are your hosts, Les Grobstein and David Schuster.
And welcome into the latest edition of the Grobstein Schuster Express podcast. I am David Schuster. Les again has the night off, but fear not, sports fans, because we're all in very capable hands. As in just a moment, my good friend Bruce Levine will be joining us. He'll be here and he'll be talking a lot of baseball. And I promise we have a lot of baseball conversation coming up on tonight's podcast. We're certainly going to talk about the Cubs and the White Sox. The White Sox winning today handily, 13-1, and they take 5 out of 6 in the Crosstown Classic with the Cubs. We'll talk about the Cubs individually. We'll talk about the White Sox individually. We'll certainly talk a little bit about the Bears. Justin Fields out playing Andy Dalton, but too bad. Andy Dalton's going to be your quarterback at least for a while, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The Bulls made a big trade the other day. They did finally deal Lauri Markkanen. Anybody who thought that Markkanen would still be on the Bulls come the beginning of the regular season, guess again. He was traded or shunted off to Cleveland. Good opportunity for him. The Bulls get back Derek Jones Jr. and a couple of picks, one of them being conditional. We'll certainly talk a lot about Major League Baseball beyond the Cubs and the White Sox. But I want to start, speaking of Major League Baseball, before we bring Bruce in, I got to talk about Javier Baez. And if you haven't caught up with this story just yet, let me clue you in. Javier Baez, who's been struggling mightily, that's an understatement. He hit a tremendously long home run. I think it was in his first bat today. It was 444 feet. It went into the second deck at Citi Field. But then he and some of his teammates must have collaborated about this in advance. And he, in essence, basically, he took a shot at the fans. And I'll get into details here in just a second. And basically what he and some of his cohorts teammates, I should say, on the team, when the Mets players did something good and the fans cheered them, then he put his thumbs down, as did some of his teammates, and basically, sticking it up the fans, what. And then after the game, he really took off, in quotes after the game, and I'll even read you, quote, "When we don't get success, we're going to get booed." And he's been plenty booed, by the way. So the fans, are going to get booed when we get success. In essence, he took off on the fans, the New York fans, and welcome to New York, Javier. It's not so easy playing in that city, as Bruce will tell us in just a moment here. But, you don't ever win when you go off against the fans. I've been doing this for a long, long time. Every time a player in any sport took off on the fans, he lost. Now, they still will get paid a lot of money, but I guess what? Javier Baez just lost a lot of money today. First of all, I don't think the Mets are going to re-sign him anyway. He's not coming back to the Cubs, that's for sure also. But any team that ultimately signs him knows that he took a major shot against the fans in New York today, but the fans in general. And so his price tag just went way down, and his agent should have chastised him immediately after the game. I'll tell you who did chastise him. That's the president of the New York Mets, that's Sandy Alderson, who was extremely upset. Again, if you're in any kind of hierarchy position with a sports franchise, and you see one of your players go after the fans, you have to be livid about that because, again, you just can't win. I am preaching. Thank you, Tony. So Javier Baez is really going to be called into the principal's office here in very short order. In fact, Sandy Alderson said there's going to be a team, and I do mean a team meeting tomorrow, and he is going to rip the you-know-what off all those players with Baez being in the front of the class. All right, without further ado, and I got a feeling Bruce might have some of the same comments as I do, let's bring in Bruce Levine. Bruce, of course, a longtime friend of mine. He's host of Inside the Clubhouse on The Score. He is you're the dean of baseball people nowadays, Bruce. You're the Bigfoot in Chicago. Welcome in.
Yeah, that means I'm still alive. That's the only thing it means. Yeah, I've been doing it a long time, but actually, you and George often still have years. I think you have a couple years over me. George has a couple years over you?
Decades.
Decades. Well, anyways, we're all around. I think next year will be my 40th year, and I think you're 42nd or third, whatever. George is, like you said, from the 1910s. Yeah, it's been a joy. All these decades working with you guys and talking to fans, and now having great podcasts like you and Les have to be able to even get a more intimate way of talking to people, using the language you want to use, no filters.
No filters.
It's really evolved quite a bit over the years.
There's two places where you don't have to have filters. One of them is when you're senile. I won't have any filter then either. And certainly on a podcast, you don't have to have any filters. I want to say hello to a friend of mine, Ginger Gunther, Ginger Gunther Siegel, who just checked in. So Ginger, hope to see you sometime shortly down the road. Bruce, I was talking about Javier Baez. I mean, what a knucklehead. I mean, Javier, and you know this, Bruce, Javier's a good guy. He's never in any kind of trouble, unlike a lot of other players. But at times, he's just not smart. And today was one of those times when he just was not intelligent whatsoever.
Well, I'm going to use the adage I told you about before. Our old friend Jim Hendry, the former GM of the Cubs, would always say when situations came up where a player kind of stepped on his own foot, he would say, you know what, money doesn't come with instructions. And that's kind of what sports is all about, David, because the more that we throw accolades at players and idolize them, and the more money they get, the more they feel like they can say and do whatever they want. And for the most part, the athletes that we've covered over the years are gentlemen and people that have understood the responsibility of, being here for a short time, making a lot of money, and becoming famous. In some cases like this, people lose their way. And today, Javier Baez and his teammates definitely lost their way, trying to figure out how to control the narrative of fans paying their good money and in some cases unwarranted money paid to watch them and not be able to express themselves. As long as you're not hurting the person next to you and you're not hurting an athlete or anybody else physically, fans are fans. That's what you pay your money for, to be able to express yourself and allow your emotion to come out. Whether someone else likes it or not has nothing to do with anything. So they were way off base here. Baez has really hurt himself as far as his free agency goes, just looking at this situation and not understanding that he's a paid athlete, paid handsomely to play a kid's sport, and that without the fans, we should have learned this last year. Nobody complained more about fans not being in the stands last year than Javier Baez. He used that as the reason that he didn't perform well, because he needs the energy of the fans. Well, he was getting the energy of the fans. Unfortunately, it wasn't going his way and their way. And the great fans at Wrigley Field and at Guaranteed Rate, they don't boo the athletes there unless it's really warranted. And in this case, Baez, for the most part, during his entire career, has heard nothing but cheers, even when he strikes out 200 times a year. So from all of that, there's some real reality missing here for these athletes, in particular on the Mets right now.
Yeah, one of our listeners, Tom Garcia, just said fans and players can express their opinions, I guess, as long as they don't say anything offensive. Here it is. He just put it back up on the screen. I hope you can see that as well. Tom Garcia, fans and players have a right to express themselves as long as it's not offensive. Yeah, I would agree to a degree, Tom. The only part is when a player takes off on the fans. And by the way, after the game, Javier Baez says he loves the fans. If you love the fans, you don't do what you did today. You just don't. And what I would have to tell Javier Baez, you don't love the fans. You love the fans' money, because it's the fans' money that is ultimately paying your salary now and further down the road. So it's just a stupid thing. The and here's Tony Trachita, who says the last White Sox player that got booed constantly was Adam Dunn. You know what, Bruce? Let's talk about Adam Dunn because, yeah, he was booed plenty. But you and I knew Adam Dunn. I don't think he really cared because he had $56 million coming for 4 years from the White Sox. He really didn't care. He didn't.
Nothing bothered Adam Dunn.
No.
I mean, he was playing out the chain, giving whatever little he had left, which wasn't very much, and occasionally hitting a home run, and more than occasionally setting a strikeout record, which he did with the White Sox that I believe was broken, I think, by somebody with the Orioles a few years after Adam retired. I'm spacing on his name right now. But, the irony of all that is that Baez was on pace to break that record when he was here with the Cubs. I don't know where he's at right now, but he's got to be right around 180. I think the record is somewhere around 227 or 8, maybe 230, somewhere around there. So, getting booed in a new ballpark where he's hitting with something like 210 right now, it shouldn't be that hard to understand. I mean, you're a new player there. They brought you in to help. The Mets have gone totally backwards since that trade. It's not Javi's fault, but he hasn't contributed much there in the way of helping him win. And if I'm a Mets fan, I'm booing as well. I mean, they were riding high most of the year in first place, and the last month they've gone into the toilet.
Yeah. I think they had that 13-game stretch against the Giants and the Dodgers. They went 2-11. Javier Baez has not performed at all in New York. And listen, welcome to New York. Like I said earlier on, those are tough fans, and the media is equally as tough there. So he's not going to hear the last of this. That's 100% for sure. All right, enough of Javier Baez. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Cubs and the Sox. Today you saw a total shellacking. The White Sox hit 5 home runs. Luis Robert, who's only going to get better and better and better. Love this guy. He hit 2 of those 5 home runs. Dylan Cease and the other former Cub player from the Jose Quintana trade, hit a home run as well. So this is a total shellacking. The Cubs did get one of the 6 games in the Crosstown Classic, and that was a good performance by Alec Mills in last night's game. But overall, it's obvious the White Sox are the team on the absolute rise, and the Cubs, I have no idea where the Cubs are going, Bruce. I just don't.
It's really difficult to identify right now. They do have some good young-looking pitchers finally after many, many years of non-development in the starting pitching department, which is even goes beyond Epstein Hoyer back to Jim Hendry's era, where they weren't developing starting pitching at the end. During the beginning of Jim's career as a GM, they did a marvelous job developing Pryor and Wood and Carlos Zambrano. But it's been few and far between starting pitchers developed in the Cub organization since around 2010. And there are the good looking pitchers like Thompson and there's Alzolay coming along, and Steele. But they're unfinished products. I mean, we don't know if they're going to be great pitchers. We know that they're good young pitchers that have good arms. It's really the first good arms that have come through the Cubs system in 10 years. So we don't know where that's going to go. All we do know is they're going to get an opportunity to pitch. And as far as going out in the free agent market, I'm told that indeed they are very much ahead of what was taking place in 2011 when Epstein came in and started the rebuild. They will spend money on free agents. They will not sit still and watch it dissipate for 3 or 4 years.
They better go off and get some free agents, because I think Major League Baseball might uninvite them to that Field of Dreams game next year if they show up with the same product. Let's talk about one other specific thing in today's Cubs-Sox game before we get into more generalities about both teams. Jose Abreu goes over 100 RBIs for the 6th time in 8 years. One of the times he wasn't able to was last year in the very shortened season when he had 78 RBIs. Bruce, this guy is just an automatic RBI machine, and I will go to my grave. They always say that the RBIs are not important. bullshit. Of course they're important. It's the middle of the order, the guy who's driving in the runs. You don't win unless you drive in runs and outscore the other team. Jose Abreu, to me, Bruce, and I know a lot of people say that he, reminds them of Albert Pujols, but you know who he reminds me of, who was very consistent in RBIs just like him? Tony Perez, who was right in the middle of that Reds lineup in the great big red machine. He drove in run after run after run, and that's exactly what Jose Abreu has been doing.
Look, La Russa has been asked about this all year long. People who are into, advanced metrics totally say that, it's a chance situation and that RBI is not a good indicator of the quality of the player. I'm with you. I've watched enough baseball over the years to know if you're in the middle of the order and you're not driving in runs, you're not getting the job done. And in the case of Abreu, he gets the job done as much or more as just about anybody in baseball. Therefore, whether you like the RBI number or not, Jose Abreu is a very productive player. And every team in baseball would like to have one or two Jose Abreu's that can help you by driving in 100 runs. Again, I don't see the downside to a guy that actually drives in runs for 3 or 4 years now, maybe, 4 years. Chris Bryant had been getting ripped for not driving in enough runs. His first couple of years, he drove in a lot. Then all of a sudden they started to manipulate where he batted in the order. And he started to bat up 2 rather than 3 and 4. I think that impacted him driving in runs more than anything else, that and injuries as well. But, all of a sudden he gets a rap from the scouting people as somebody that doesn't drive in runs. Well, the opportunity and the people hitting in front of you will dictate an awful lot of whether you're going to be able to drive in runs or not.
100%. All right. Dylan Cease gets the win today. He struck out 11. I think the Cubs struck out 15 for the game today. It's really interesting. I've been watching Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease, and Steve Stone says this consistently on TV. He's got the best stuff of all the guys, and he might because he's got 4 good pitches. Dylan Cease is still a young pitcher, and where he's got to further develop is having more consistency in all those pitches and his control, because he's always up around 90, 100 pitches by the 5-inning mark. That's why he doesn't go very deep in games. But it's really interesting because I look at Dylan Cease along with Lucas Giolito, and I don't know if this is an Ethan Katz kind of thing where, he's tutored both of them. When both of them follow through with, and not when guys are on base, when they follow through from the windup position, they fall off and sort of are off balance after throwing the pitch. Do you notice that? And is that, what do you make out of that? That's sort of weird.
You also see at the end a high leg kick. From both of them time to time. Yeah. So it's just the freedom that and it isn't something that Katz works with these guys with, the freedom of when you're done with your delivery, feel free to let go. And I've never seen it before very often either, but it's something that you astutely picked up, and it also is the end of a simple way that he teaches starting pitchers to go into the no windup, have as few mechanical movements as possible, and then just let your stuff play. And they both have had tremendous success with this. And I'm with Steve Stone. I think once Cease believes enough in his stuff and can continue to repeat his mechanics, the sky is the limit for him. I think he's you don't say 20-game winner anymore because there's very few that ever happens. I don't know if we're going to have any this year at all. But he's a guy that's going to win 15 games, throw 220 innings, strike out 220 guys, and be that type of dominant pitcher, like, possibly like a Schuster, like a Verlander. I think he has that type of stuff. So I believe that Stone is right. And Steve has been saying this all along since Cease began to be at the big league level with the White Sox 3 years ago.
And talk about the high leg kick and falling off the mound to the left side. Listen, in the old days, opposing teams would bunt down the third base line and take advantage of that, but no one bunts anymore, so I guess they can get away with that. Let's talk about Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson was off again today and will be off with the off day, of course, tomorrow. And listen, I have some friends who are panicking that, he should be in the lineup all the time. You got a 10-game lead. No need for him to be in there. He is absolutely, they talked about Dexter Fowler back in the day. You go, we go. Well, that's absolutely true with Tim Anderson. He's the spark, to get the engine going. So you need him at optimum strength. And when you have a 10-game lead or whatever they have, it's okay to rest that guy. He's so integral in what they will need down the road. But is there any fear that this is more than just some aches and pains? Is he doing one of the old Luke Appling things where it's, old ache and pains, or what's going on with Tim Anderson?
He's too athletic for the sport.
Yeah, could be.
And he was playing on artificial turf in Tampa. So that I think it exacerbated the situation where he's got two sore hamstrings. An athlete like Tim Anderson cannot be the player he needs to be on the field with two sore hamstrings. So if you have to rest him for a week or 10 days, go right ahead and do it, because you have a 11 game. Well, no, Cleveland came back, so you have a 10-game lead, and that's going to be plenty with 30 games left. You're going to coast into a championship sometime by the middle or the 20th of September, and you'll be the champion of the division. Rest Tim Anderson. Don't play Grandal every day. Make sure Jimenez gets off his feet and DHs. Rest Abreu. Have him take a day or two off. He doesn't even have to DH certain days. Make sure they're ready, and most importantly, get guys like Lance Lynn and Keuchel 10 days off. Give them 2 starts off. There's no reason why you have to still push them out there when they're already at 25, 26, 27 starts. They have gotten you to where you want to go. Now back off of them. Let them throw some bullpens and stay crisp, but give them the rest that they need right now. Because of coming off of 2020, nobody, including Lance Lynn, who led all pitchers in starts and in innings with, I think, 82 or 83 innings, is really capable of going and much further here without wearing down. So listen to it. Use your eyeballs. See what you're seeing. These guys are tired. Rest them. You have ample time to rest them and get them back up into where you want them to be come the playoffs.
All right, you mentioned Lance Lynn. I've noticed that his velocity is down a couple of ticks over his last 3 or 4 starts, and I think it started with that Field of Dream games that I attended in Iowa. Also, his pitch count has been higher because his control has been off, obviously. And you're 100% correct. I don't know if you want to go to a 6-man rotation. I'm not a big believer in that, but you got Ronaldo Lopez, who can certainly spell anybody in that starting rotation, and he's been pretty decent since coming back to the ball club. So you can skip a guy in the rotation if you have a Ronaldo Lopez, and you can do that also with Keuchel. Keuchel is really, I don't understand. His velocity is off. He's got no sharpness to almost any of his pitches, and that's been pretty much all season long. So you're 1,000% correct, Bruce. You got to give these guys some rest. And when you have a 10-game lead, this is where Tony La Russa will earn every penny of his contract. Just get them ready for the postseason. The division was over almost before it started. It's over. You'll win the damn thing, but get your team ready. That's his main mantra at this point.
You're right, David. And it couldn't happen but the timing of the schedule is perfect for the White Sox. They are off twice this week. They're off on Monday. They're off on Wednesday. And what happens on Wednesday? You get to add 2 more players to your roster. So there's this year's expanded rosters. In the past, up until last year, you could expand as many players as you wanted. For years, general managers complained about non-contending teams bringing up multiple pitchers and were beating good teams in September because they could match up every other pitcher. Now they can't do that any longer. But for the White Sox, they can bring up 2 extra pitchers. The other beautiful part of this is that the minor league season goes all the way through September this year. It never did that before. So you have a place to get players from who are active, and you have a place for guys to go to rehabilitate for another month. It's a perfect scene. It's a perfect scenario for the Chicago White Sox to do the right thing all the way around. Now, easy for me to say. I'm not the general manager. I'm not Jerry Reinsdorf. I'm not Tony La Russa. I'm not the pitching coaches. I'm not the trainers. I don't have to tell these guys they're going to have the next 10 days off and fight the fight where they say, well, if I'm not good after that, that's going to be on you. These are athletes who've done it one way their whole lives. They pitch the same way. They want to stay in rhythm. I get that. But at some point, just use some common sense. And they have plenty of time to get everybody ready and rested. That's why they worked so hard and did so well to get that 10-game lead right now.
One more thing on the White Sox, but first I want to say hello to my friend Laura Brand. Hi, Laura. One last thing on the White Sox. Craig Kimbrell and also Liam Hendricks. Ever since they've made the trade, it hasn't worked out exactly the way they wanted, where Kimbrell was going to pitch the 8th and Hendricks was going to pitch the 9th, and they were both going to be flawless. Basically, Kimbrell's been not very good at all in the 8th inning. What is it psychological, Bruce? Is there other things? I mean, I know he had a death in his family also, which obviously, listen, these guys are human. They're not robots. And even Hendricks, and I'm going back also to the game at the Field of Dream games, he's given up a ton of home runs also. Is there any fear about these guys, or maybe do they need to cut back a little bit on both of them as well?
I would certainly rest them. But the thing with Kimbrell and closers in particular, when you're used to being the man, you're used to hearing the music, coming out, getting the adrenaline going, and being on the mound for your team there at the end, and you are the guy they congratulate the most for closing out the game. When you're the 8th inning guy, there's no music, okay? There's no adulation. There's nothing other than, gee, do a nice job so our closer can get the job done. There's, no matter how great you say you are as a teammate, no matter how much you understand that your role is essential to your team winning, there's a tick down in velocity. There's a tick down in adrenaline. There's a tick down in how important you are to the team. It's the reality of the situation. This guy was the best closer in the National League. He comes over to the American League. He pitches for the White Sox. Now he's somebody else's setup man. It's just the way it is. I mean, you are seeing what it is. And I don't blame Kimbrell. It's not like he's not trying to get people out, but he is subservient to setting up for Hendricks, and that's just the way it is. Too bad. I mean, you know what? I never wanted to go out with my girlfriend in high school after she'd been out on a date with somebody else. It wasn't appealing to me. There were options sometimes, but it was not appealing to me. But, I'd rather be the closer than the setup guy.
Instead of playing him the music, just flash him. Tony can flash him his World Series ring. And listen, Kimbrell's got one already, by the way. Just flash him the damn ring, and that's what you're playing for at this point. The hell with the damn music.
It is. It's totally cerebral because there's nothing wrong with the stuff that he has. It's just a different dynamic, not only for him, but think about the hitters that he's facing. In the 8th inning, it's not life or death for the hitter, okay? So they're having their best at bats. You're seeing the best batters. You're seeing the best pinch hitters. You're seeing guys choking up on the bat. You're seeing a different approach than you see in the 8th inning. In the 9th inning, it's just totally different. So you're seeing a lot looser hitter face you as Craig Kimbrell in the 8th inning than you did in the 9th.
All right. Again, for all those Sox fans, who are worrying about this, that, and everything else, and I guess I just brought up a lot of worries potentially. Just relax. Everything's going to be just fine. They're going to be a postseason team. Then let's just see how they perform in that postseason. Let's turn over to the Cubs. Patrick Wisdom had a great series with 4 home runs, 2 and a. Bruce, I'm not normally fooled by players who are a little bit older who get a chance to play. But Wisdom has always been a power hitter wherever he's played, coming out of the St. Louis organization. I don't know what happened over there, but the kid's got power, okay? And he plays a pretty decent third base as well. I mean, he seems to be going forward of all the players that we're seeing out there. maybe Ortega as well. He seems to be the one that that you can pencil into next year's lineup already.
Well, he fits pretty well with what the modern player wants and what modern teams want, and that is a guy that potentially can hit you 40 home runs, a guy that could potentially drive you in 100, but also not caring what his outs are all about. I mean, he has a ratio of 40% strikeouts, okay? That's probably the highest ratio in baseball for anybody with close to 150 or 200 at bats. So from that perspective, in this era, people don't really care very much about how you make those outs. If you hit 250 or 260, you drive in a lot of runs, you hit home runs, you play your position well, you're considered a good player. Now, that said, if Wisdom is batting third or fourth for the Cubs next year, that's not going to be a good sign, because that means that they haven't taken this good player and surrounded him with better hitters and better players that they want to bring into the organization. So ideally you want a guy like this to hit sixth or seventh and have some real pop near the bottom of your order. That would be ideal for a guy like Wisdom to be playing third base and batting sixth or seventh for the Cubs next year. Then you might have a sense that David Ross has a really good lineup and a chance to score 5 or 6 runs every day.
A couple more on the Cubs. Kyle Hendricks overall has had a pretty good season. His ERA is starting to balloon. It went over 4 today. He gave up a lot of runs in that last inning of work. Do you think all of a sudden he just got caught up in the malaise of the Cubs and all the trades and everything? And listen, he's human also. I mean, you were contending. You were a first place team into almost the beginning of June or whatever it was. And then, most of the name players were dealt away. And Kyle Hendricks, has sort of steadily gone down ever since then. I mean, what do you make out of that situation?
The defense didn't do him any favors today, okay? And I'm not going to make an excuse for Hendricks. He gave up the home runs, but they were guaranteed rate home runs, which is the equivalent of even less length than at Wrigley Field. You're talking about 360-foot home runs, 370. So taking nothing away from the White Sox hitters who hit him hard, they were playable balls in other ballparks. Again, Ortega, his route to the ball in center field on Abreu's 3-run double, he's been a nice player, but he's not a center fielder. So getting to your point, yes, it is very possible that as professional as Hendricks is and as cold-hearted as he is out on the mound by being unafraid, he could be affected by the fact that, we don't have quite as much around us as we used to have, and it has possibly gotten to him because, he still leads the National League, or tied for the league in wins with 14. But in this case, the last couple outings has just not been what he's wanted.
Bruce, let me just ask you one last thing on the Cubs. Obviously, they dealt away Baez, they dealt away Rizzo, they dealt away Bryant, they dealt away Kimbrel, they dealt away even Jack Peterson. And they made a very conscious decision to sort of slide down in the standings. I'm not saying they're throwing the season, but listen, when you traded all those players, that's what was going to happen. But we really haven't heard from the boss. I mean, the ultimate boss, meaning Tom Ricketts. Do you believe that the fans, through the media, of course, deserve to hear from Tom Ricketts, and that at some point he should have a press conference and explain not only what he decided to do, because it was his decision ultimately to do what they did during this season, and really what the path is going forward, instead of waiting for him to talk to the media at spring training next year?
Well, I think Tom will pick his time to talk to the fans, because I do know that the fans are very important to him. For 12 years that he's been an owner, Tom has done nothing but walk around Wrigley Field and talk to every fan that wants to talk to him. This year, beginning of the year, you couldn't do it. Last year, you couldn't do it because of COVID. But when these hard baseball decisions have to be made, like trading off some of the greatest players in the franchise's history, you want to pick your spot in the right way and at the right time so that you don't send a message out and usurp the responsibility from your baseball president and general manager. Tom has made it clear many times that Jed Hoyer is now in charge of baseball activity and the direction they go, that Crane Kenny is in charge of business as the president of business operations, and he is in charge of that, and that Tom oversees both areas. So budget-wise, I expect Tom to talk to the fans sometime in September, maybe right after the season ends, and let them know exactly what his thoughts are and where he expects this team to go and the economics of it as well. Because look, the Cubs have a tremendous fan base, as the White Sox do. It's bigger than the White Sox fan base as far as season ticket holders. They have a responsibility to the fans to put out a great product. They have done that for a long period of time, and I expect Tom to come out and talk about all that at some point when he chooses the right point.
And speaking of Tom Garcia just chimed in. Speaking of general managers, will the Cubs ever hire a general manager? They got a lot of other people working in the front office, but when's he going to get around to naming somebody?
Well, he will. He told us in spring training that he wasn't going to hire a general manager this year, that because of COVID, he wasn't able to bring in anybody to talk to and interview. We forget that even going back to March and April, you weren't able to congregate with people very much until people started getting vaccinated. And he wasn't able to bring in people to spend time with. If you're going to hire a general manager, especially outside of the organization, you want to spend time interviewing 3 or 4 people and get to know them before you make that important of a move. And it's got to be somebody he can really work with, because the working relationship that he's had in the past with Theo Epstein has been above and beyond great communications and friendships. Same things with Jason McLeod in San Diego when he was the underboss for Hoyer back when they were together in San Diego, running that for a couple of years. So it's a big deal to bring in the right guy, and I think with time here after the season, I think you'll see them hire a general manager.
All right, before we get to our walk down memory lane segment, and of course the ever popular Stump the Grobber, but tonight it'll be Stump the Bruce potential quiz thing here at the end. A couple other things in baseball. The Yankees went on that long winning streak, 13 in a row. They lost yesterday. They're currently tied in the 8th inning out in Oakland. And listen, the last game they lost before last night was the Field of Dreams game. That team is going to hit a lot of home runs, obviously. I don't know if they have enough pitching overall. The Dodgers and the Giants, that's probably the best overall race. But honestly, Bruce, the races are not that great this year. The wild card is always close one way or another, but the division races are all pretty much seemingly set. You think baseball's a little upset about that?
I don't know, because right now, if the season ended today, the Dodgers would be playing the Padres one game to determine who ends up, in the NLDS. I mean, the Dodgers, the most dominant team in baseball for a number of years right now, and the world champions from the, abbreviated season last year, are in jeopardy of having one bad game and being out of the playoffs. So I think that's pretty exciting. We're back to, last year, if you remember, the wild card series was 2 out of 3. The Cubs, remember, only too well, having lost 2 in a row at home to the Marlins. We're back to one game. And that type of, instant elimination is pretty exciting. So you could see some really good teams like the Yankees and the Red Sox eliminated in one day after being, dominant teams for good portions of the year here. Tampa looks like the winner. The Yankees still have a shot at that. But you're going to go into September and Tampa's going to have around a 5-game lead. That's a pretty big lead going in. It can be you can accomplish overtaking a team, but it's going to have to be a collapse. The Cubs had a few of those in recent years where they had 4.5, 5.5, 6-game leads going into September and blew them. But in this situation, you're going to have very good teams eliminated in the first day of the playoffs.
Yep, that's definitely going to happen, and hopefully the White Sox make a deep run. I'll just leave it at that. There's also some really where the best races might be are in the postseason awards, and maybe more than any place else is the manager of the years. Tell me if I'm wrong. In the American League, I think Dusty Baker is going to win this award. I think that there's so many writers who love this guy, and I'm one of them, by the way. I'm not a writer, but I'm one of the media people who loves Dusty Baker. I mean, Kevin Cash has been fantastic year in, year out. He's going to be in the running. And Tony, of course, will be in the running, but I don't think he's going to win it. Of the names that I just made mention, who do you think?
Well, I like La Russa, honestly. I mean, there was pressure on Dusty, and he's done a great job there. But I don't think there's more pressure on any manager in recent years that I can think of, more pressure than on Tony La Russa, who was one of the most unpopular hirings in recent Chicago history, if you believe in what you see written, if you believe what you hear on the Score and what you hear on ESPN 1000, if you believe the pushback by the fans and the people that are on those shows, this was unpopular, and people didn't want it. The only guy that wanted it was Jerry Reinsdorf. Well, you know what? They're gonna walk away with their division, and I don't know if anybody has been more honest, open, and good at what he's done than Tony La Russa this year. Show me someone else that's got a 10-game lead in their division. So, and that said, after losing your left fielder, your center fielder, and 3 more outfielders the rest of the way, I mean, that is, to me, I think he's done a fabulous job, and I think he should be the runaway winner as the manager of the year. Taking nothing away from Dusty, who had to deal with a team that over the last 2 years that was in disarray and admitted cheaters and hated by everybody in baseball. A fabulous job. So if he wins, I will not be shocked, and it will be well-deserved as well.
All right, how about the National League? You got and really the guy who's not getting any publicity, and I don't understand, is out in San Francisco, Gabe Kapler.
Yeah.
Who's taken a team. Really, no one thought the Giants were going to be there. Everybody thought the Dodgers and the Padres, and here the Giants are still leading that division. You got Craig Counsell, who's obviously going to win the division here in the National League Central, and Brian Snitker, who's overcome his own set of injuries down in Atlanta, and they're going to run away in their division. I mean, that's another good race there.
To me, Craig Counsell has proved to me over the last 4 years that he's probably the best manager in baseball. He gets the most out of the least. And David Stearns, the GM, does a fantastic job there as well. But Counsell knows his players, knows the usage, gets more out of players than anybody I've seen over that period of time. But again, Kapler has done a fantastic job there. And, they're already won 82 or 83 games. That's unbelievable with still a month to go in the season. So I think it's a toss-up between Kapler and Counsell. Those guys have done a fabulous job, and nobody should feel bad if one or the other doesn't win. But Counsell hasn't gotten it yet, and this will be, I think, the 4th year in a row that the Brewers will be going to the playoffs, which is unheard of in Brewer history. They had never gone more than 2 in a row up until last year. So Craig Counsell, to me, is tremendously impressive.
Got to give the Brewers some credit. I mean, they didn't have much pitching the last few years, and all of a sudden they have 2 guys that are probably in the running for Cy Young in the National League, and Burns and Woodruff. They both have pitched extremely well. You start a series with those 2 guys, and, you can get to Hader in the 9th inning. That's a pretty good formula in itself. Speaking of pitchers, one more award category I want to get your opinion on. The American League Cy Young. And the White Sox got 2 pitchers that are at least going to be in the conversation. Lance Lynn is probably even though he's been tailing a little bit and coming off a bad outing, he's probably right now the quote-unquote odds-on favorite in the American League. Carlos Rodon was way up there as well. He missed some playing time. He's going to get a chance, hopefully, to get another 4, maybe 5 starts before the season's over, although I'd rest him. Are those 2 guys, 1 and 1A, or is like Robbie?
Well, you're missing Garrett Cole.
Garrett Cole also with the Yankees.
He's going to be right there with those. I think those 3 get most of the votes, and with the East Coast bias sometimes, although the voters from BBWAA are divided up, and not necessarily all from the East Coast. So everybody's given different things to vote for. So I think Cole has a really good chance at it. There's been a little bit of fade here for Lynn. There's been a little bit fade for Carlos. Cole has just been off the charts. So to me, I think it's probably going to be Cole, but the other two White Sox pitchers certainly should get a lot of mention because they were the reason that the White Sox have the big lead that they have right now.
All right, I want to remind everybody that we are fortunate enough to talk to Bruce Levine, host of Inside the Clubhouse on The Score. He's joining us for the remainder of the show. Bruce, real quickly, walk down memory lane segment and everything that had, this week has been in regards to the Cubs and the White Sox. And I just remember one time, and this is when the Cubs had their old clubhouse, and Darwin Barney, you remember him, of course. Darwin Barney's locker was in the corner down by the end where we walked down the stairs. And Darwin Barney had that stupid Barney dinosaur on top of his locker, the purple dinosaur. And that purple dinosaur was situated right next to what was the BP Cup, the British Petroleum Cup, for winning the damn thing. And it was so funny because Barney, looked up and he goes, I know what the dinosaur is, but what is that spittoon up there? And we had to educate him that was the trophy that they won for winning the Cubs Sox series. And he goes, what an ugly trophy.
Yeah, the White Sox won this spittoon this year. They took 5 of 6. It's interesting to just talk about the White Sox and Cubs, briefly as we close out this segment about memory lane. They've been playing each other now for unbelievable. This year, I think, is the 25th year for real, going back to 1997. And before that, it was always in the 20s and 30s. They either played a game or, in some years, a series that benefited the boys and girls clubs of Chicago, and the money went to that. So there were always White Sox seemed to always have advantage in that series when they didn't play for real. Now the White Sox are back up, I think, 70-64. That's really close over 24 years to be that close. So I think the fans from both sides of town have really gotten a lot out of those games.
All right, with that in mind, let's get to our final segment. It is known as Stump the Grobber.
Okay.
What was that?
That doesn't really make sense.
What?
Live and let live.
I'm not familiar with that expression.
It's James Bond.
Doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Of course, I'm alive.
2 queens on casino night. I am going to drop a deuce on everybody.
I just want to say for the record, I did not kill anyone. Stanley was attacked by his own heart.
I know where this is going.
Do you? Okay. It's now time for Stump the Grobber on the Grobstein and Schuster Express.
And Bruce will be sitting in for Les on this one. So tonight it's not Stump the Grobber, it's Stump the Bruce, I guess.
I love the graphics, David. Fantastic graphics.
I take no credit for that. But whoever did, I'll pass on your accolades. All right, all the questions today are in regards to the Cubs and White Sox playing each other over the years. So here we go. I got 4 questions, Bruce.
All right.
The first one, as you mentioned, the interleague series or interleague games between the Cubs and the Sox didn't start until 97, but they did play a bunch of exhibition games annually, even before that, even before they had the Better Boys Foundation games, which was going back to my youth, actually. But they played exhibition games, I think, from 85 to 95. And in 1994, they played this game at Wrigley Field. Who was the White Sox right fielder that day?
Well, he was a guy that could fly through a basketball court and actually got a double in that game, and that was Michael Jordan.
It was Michael Jordan. Absolutely correct. I knew you would get that.
I remember the interview Harry Carey did with him afterwards. It was one of those classics where they were both smiling through the whole thing. Harry bumbling his way through asking Michael about baseball and just enjoying the hell out of the whole situation. And nobody enjoyed it more than Michael, who was that was probably if you think about it, the highlight of his baseball career in his hometown, where he became a mega worldwide star, getting a double in a game that he hadn't played since he was 14 years old.
If I recall, it wasn't even a hard hit double, was it? It was
It was right down the line.
Right. It was a
Yeah.
bleeder.
But you know what? And 27 years later, it looked like a hard line drive. And if you talk to Michael, he's going to tell you that ball was smoked.
100%. All right, the next one. The Crosstown Series between 2010 and 2012 was known as we said with Darwin Barney, the BP Cup. Okay, from 2013 to 2015, nobody sponsored the Goofy game. There was a sponsor for 2016. Who was the sponsor that year? What company?
Yeah, I hope it was Benny's because 2016 there was another sponsor.
Yep. Vinny sponsored the reporters after the game.
One sponsor, and it wasn't an oil company, right?
No.
Okay. I have to say I do not remember that.
Okay. What was that big W that was on top of the left field scoreboard at Wrigley?
What was it?
Well, what was that W for?
Oh,
Wintrust.
Wintrust. Yeah.
Wintrust.
No longer is a sponsor, I think.
No, I don't think it is either.
Yeah.
Although one time Chris Bryant actually hit the W in that.
Correct.
And it was so dark that night because the lights were not really that bright at Wrigley Field. But he
hit the W out of it. You're right.
He did. Anyway, Wintrust was the sponsor of the game
Very
in
good.
2016. All right.
I'm stumped.
Okay.
Do I have to leave the room now? Do I have to put a dunce cap on?
No.
It would be a better segment if I did.
Less ones have even gotten the first one. All right. Now, this is one of the most famous things that happened in a Cubs-White Sox game. Of course, it was A.J. Pierzynski and Michael Barrett, and Pierzynski slapped home plate and sort of pushed Barrett, and Barrett slugged him, of course. Mm-hmm. They both got ejected. Each team had one other player ejected from that so-called fracas.
Yeah.
Who were the players on both teams who got ejected?
Well, one was Scott Podsednik.
No, actually, no.
He wasn't. Well, you know what? You know why that's interesting? Because after the collision at home plate, the first guy to do anything about it was Podsednik, and he charged Barrett, and they were rolling around on the ground, and that started the whole brawl. So I'm shocked that it wasn't Podsednik. But so besides Barrett and besides Pierzynski, I will say was a mild-mannered guy that played first base for the White Sox?
No.
Okay. All right, then I will say I have no idea other than Scott Podsednik who should have been ejected.
Okay, and believe me, Bruce, I wouldn't have known this one either unless I looked it up, of course. Brian Anderson must have put himself.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that now. He jumped right into the fray.
Brian Anderson was the White Sox player besides Pierzynski who got ejected, and the Cubs player, and Bruce, honestly, I don't remember this, John Mabry.
Okay, John Mabry.
I don't even remember him.
Yeah, he's a coach with the Cardinals these days.
Yeah. He was the other player ejected.
Are you sure it was? Wait a minute. You're sure it wasn't Andy of Mabry?
No, it was actually Otis. And that's why he had to go lock himself up.
Hey, folks, I'm here all week. Tip your waiters.
It's really interesting. So after the fact, Barrett, of course, who did the slugging, he got a 10-game suspension. Anderson got 4, and AJ wasn't even suspended. He was just fined.
He was an innocent standby, I mean, all he did was get in Barrett's face, slap home plate, and just dare him to do something, which Barrett did by a tremendous right cross to the face. Knocked him back about 2 feet, and then Podsednik dove at Barrett, and the fight was on.
Yeah, AJ was one of the all-time instigators, but he walked away scot-free.
AJ would have been the ultimate WWE wrestler. I mean, he would have been the king of all wrestlers because he just had so much theater in him, and he could make an audience love him or hate him, depending on what side you were on.
Yeah, he's pretty decent on TV. Could you still see him
He
being
could.
a manager someday?
I don't think he could put up with having to say nice things all the time
Yes.
about players that aren't getting the job done. I don't think that's in his makeup of going, well, he struck out 4 times, but he really, he looked locked in. He fouled a few pitches off, and that's what you have to do these days when you're a manager. You can't say anything negative about a player. If you do, the player he's going to have a little bit of a nervous breakdown. You're going to have to sit in with the general manager. You're going to have to tell him 4 or 5 different ways that he doesn't stink like he did that day.
All right, I want to take you back. One last one. I'm going to take you back to the very first game in Interleague between the Cubs and the White Sox. Again, it was 1997. The Cubs actually won the game 8-3. They only played 3 games on the South side that year, and the Cubs won the first one. The Sox won the next 2. But in that very first game, the Cubs won the game 8-3, like I mentioned. Who was the winning and losing pitcher, and who hit the only home run in the game? And if you don't know these, that's fine. I didn't know any of these either. I had to look them all up.
Was a nondescript Sox player that hit the home run?
Yes.
Did he play shortstop?
No.
Okay. So that was another game that Mike Caruso won. I think it was maybe in 98 or 99 where he hit a big home run, and he never had hit a home run the rest of the year. I think it was the only home run he hit. Might have been the only one in his career. But a nondescript player on the 1997 White Sox, and definitely not a home run hitter, right?
He had a little bit of power. Actually, one of our listeners, our viewers, Tom Garcia, just flashed it up on the screen. He got the right answer.
You have no idea.
Lyle Mouton.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I loved Lyle. Great guy.
Yeah, he had a little bit of power.
He could hit a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the winning pitcher for the Cubs didn't exactly have a great career, obviously, but he won that game.
Was he a starting pitcher for the White Sox as well?
I'm trying to think. He might have been.
It wasn't Navarro.
He was a losing pitcher.
Oh, he was a losing. I knew he was in that game.
We'll give you that one.
He had actually been with the Cubs in 95 and 96 and then signed that 4-year deal with the White Sox in 97 that didn't work out very well. He was the guy that made all of his starts for the White Sox for 4 years, and they're always hoping that he wouldn't.
Jamie Navarro, the most famous thing that I remember about Jamie Navarro, and Ozzie Guillen was so pissed at him. Jamie Navarro, after being yanked out of a game, and they had that TV in the clubhouse, and he took a ball and he threw it through the TV, and he busted it. And Ozzie was so pissed off at him after the game. Anyway, that was so
the winning pitcher you're looking for now, because we got Navarro as the loser.
Yeah,
right. The winning pitcher for the Cubs that day, 1997. I don't know, Jim Bollinger.
It's as good a guess as any. He definitely was on that team. Kevin Foster.
Oh yeah, unfortunately Kevin passed away at a young age.
Yeah.
Frank Castillo was probably on that team as well. He passed away at an early age as well in a unfortunate swimming accident. Good guys, sorely missed, but that's how quickly those 27 years go, huh?
Yeah, it's absolutely. Was Kevin Foster from the Chicagoland area?
Evanston. He was
Evanston
from
High School. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, really fine young man.
He was a nice guy. I do remember that.
Well, I failed miserably here. All I got was Michael Jordan. So send me the dunce cap. Next time you have me on, or you and Les have me on, I will wear it for the entire hour.
Fair enough. Hey, Bruce, I appreciate you joining us. I'll see you at the ballpark upcoming this week, probably on Tuesday night. You're the best. Host of Inside the Clubhouse. You can follow him on Twitter like so many others do. Appreciate you joining us, Bruce.
All right. Always enjoy it, David. Have a great night.
All right, you as well. And good night to everybody else. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another great guest. Talk to you then.